Shalom everybody. This video is by user request. Recently I did an amazing video with Garment of Esav, in which we announced the publication of a very esoteric sefer called Sefer Bariah. And in that video we discussed the requirements of true Kabbalah and the secret of the Ilanot, or the trees of the worlds, which personified one as a Kabbalist, and that without an Elon one was not considered to be a true Kabbalist. I received many comments regarding the nature of the scrolls and the Ilanot, and decided to make this video to share with you guys a glimpse of some of those Elons. So with that being said, let us begin. So this particular scroll is 45 feet long. It was written in 8 days and 8 nights. I wrote this scroll to preserve the esoteric mysteries of primordial creation. And as you can see, it's all written in Aramaic and Hebrew. So I'd like to highlight this work here. It is called the Kabbalistic tree. And we can see here that the word tree is the word Elon, which is the Aramaic word for tree. They are scrolls of the worlds and are required for any true study of the Kabbalah. We can see here an amazing Elon, almost 1,000 years old, from Italy. And we can see at the very top the eye, which denotes Ein Sof. We see Keter, Chokmah, and Bina in the system as it is revealed in the Zohar, the lower Spheros. And ultimately we see Malchus here on the bottom. On the side, we can actually see Rebbe Akiba and his friends entering into Pardes. We see the Mazalot, which is a key piece of the Kabbalah when discussing the secrets of Asiya, so on and so forth. Now it was required for any true Kabbalist to actually engage in the study to produce his very own Elon. And the Elonot are not simply pieces of art or expression, but rather they are systematic understanding, like God science or divine math, by which there is a very particular system which would be laid down in the Elon, which did two things. It accredited them as an actual Kabbalist, but two, it operated as a roadmap in order to share and teach Kabbalah, without which one can neither share nor teach authentic or true Kabbalah. It would be like looking for a house in the wilderness without a map. We can see another amazing Elon that also came out of Italy. And we can see the Keter of Adam Kadmon. We can see the Partsufim called Arikainpin. We can see the divisions of Zeranpin, which are located here. We can see the Partsufim of Abba and Ima, Israel Saba, Israel Tavuna. We can see the Partsufim of Leah and Rachel. We can see the Partsuf of Yaakov. And scrolling down, we can see the the worlds of Beriah, Yetzirah, and ultimately Asiya in the Nukva. And all of the Ilanot contain, either in generality or specificity, the same information dealing with the emanation of the head, of Atik, etc. Thus, when one understands the system of Kabbalah, for it is a precise system, they then can look at any of the Ilanot and understand exactly what it is that they are viewing. And again, one was not considered a Kabbalist until they merited that title via the Ilan. This didn't just simply mean copying an Ilan, for as you can see with the various Ilanot that I have shown, they differ greatly, but rather it is a relaying of one's own mastery of the subject which merits them to teach the subject. And the beautiful thing about the varying Ilans is that they show unique expression of the authors and or writers, yet all of them contain the same information and thus can be read universally by anyone versed in the true mysteries. We can see again the Adam Kadmon and the construction of the concealed heads. And again, every single one of them was unique, yet they all followed the same systems, either in generalities or specificities. Here's a glimpse of two varying Ilans. We can see at the very top of it, these ones go into more specifics. We can see the spheros of the world of the Malbush. We see the 231 gates that are being discussed, the multiple Simsumim, and these particular Ilanot derive themselves from the Sefer Omek Hamelech, the Depths of the King, a book that Garment of Esav has recently translated for the first time, which, Hashem willing, we will be doing a video perhaps next week discussing. We can see that it shows the same general aspects. We can see here a recline pin, Zeran pin. We can see the partsufs of Abba, Ima, again Israel Saba, Israel Tavuna, the partsufim of Leah and Rachel. We see the partsufim of Yaakov. We can see Beriah and Yetzirah and Asiya as well. And the same thing on the right hand side. Now again, these particular scrolls were required to engage in the study of the Kabbalah. These practices were kept very hidden, very esoteric, and very secret. Originally, they would have to have been compiled in the Holy Land. And there are secret orders that existed during those times in which, if one of the scrolls were to have been smuggled outside of Jerusalem and the study were to have been leaked out, they would unanimously denounce that person and ultimately denounce that scroll. Interestingly enough, some of these scrolls were smuggled out of the Holy Land, and Kabbalists did take them to other places. One of the very first places that these appeared at, of course, are in Italy, and another place was in Russia. We can see here an Ilan, which was written in the form of a Kameya by Rav Kaduri, one of the greatest Kabbalists of our generation. And we can see again the partsufim of Arikain Pin. We can see Zeran Pin's partsuf. Again, we see Abba, Ima. We can see over here Israel Sabah, Israel Tavuna. We can see the partsufim of Leah and the partsufim of Rachel. We can see the partsufim of Yaakov. It continues downwards. It says Olam HaBeriah, the world of Beriah, the world of Yetzirah, the world of Asiya, and ultimately down below is the world of the Klipot. Now next to the ark that I keep my Torah scroll inside of is perhaps the only golden Elon in existence. This Elon is engraved in gold, and it follows the exact same system as it was shown on the left, following the tradition of the arizal. These Elanot were required in order to have any true understanding of actual Kabbalah. And because these Elans are no longer used, and very few people actually uphold this tradition except for a remnant, 99.9% of people who actually talk about Kabbalah do not merit to truly talk about it. Just because one studies Kabbalah does not mean they are a Kabbalist. Just because one has read all of the books does not mean that they are a Kabbalist. Until they have produced for themselves an Ilan, this is the secret of, according to the pattern that I showed you on the mountain, which teaches us that Moshe Rabbeinu received a pattern on the mountain. That mountain is Har Sinai, and that pattern is the Ilan. We can see here, again, it follows the precise system. We have above Adam Kadmon. We have here a Rikain pin. This is the Partsufim of a Rikain pin, as we saw in various other Elons. And we see here the Partsufim of Zerayin pin. We can see Abba, Ima. We can see the Partsufims of Israel Sabah and Israel Tevunah. We can see the Partsufim of Leah, the Partsufim of Rachel, the Partsufim of Yaakov. And the centerpiece is Zeranpin. We can see beneath it the world of Berea. We can see beneath that the world of Yetzirah. We can see the world of Asiya and the Klippa. And in the Klipot are the names of Lilith and Samael and other things like that. So it's very important to understand these Ilanot in order to truly study Kabbalah. Now I adorn all of my pieces, whether it be this Ilan, these books, an example of this particular book, which is a Sefer Ilan, or some of the various tomes, with a portrait. Many people ask me why they adorn the very top. And that is because until very recently, all of this was a closed practice. And therefore, I did not come in the open, nor did I teach openly. But rather, all of these writings were compiled for my children. And the portrait on the front of it was for them. Thus, the scroll and the books that I share with you guys and teach with you guys from are and still and were originally for my descendants, for my children, so that the yichus, or lineage, would be kept alive. I'll share with you guys a glimpse at the end of this video of some of the creation of the various Elons. To date, I've produced 8 45 feet long Elanot. Again, the Elon that's shown at the very beginning in the video was produced in 8 days and 8 nights. And the various Elons that I've compiled are at varying levels of specificity, some in great detailed specifics and some in generalities. However, it should be noted that I have been instructed properly in both classical Elanot as well as the Elons of my own, from which I've gone into much greater details regarding this, carrying upon my shoulders that same ancient lineage. It is very important that when one is teaching the Kabbalah, they should seek that Elon. And if they do not see that Elon, one should disregard them as a Kabbalist. Again, it doesn't mean that you can't be a fan of Kabbalah, nor to read Kabbalah, nor to study Kabbalah, but to actually be a Kabbalist, it requires those Elons. Now, from a Jewish perspective, Kabbalists are an almost mythical-like figure and very guarded and highly revered. The reason why is because it is written of our sages that a sage is preferred over a prophet. Mainly that sages can create prophets. They say that the prophet looks through a dirty mirror and the sage looks through a shining mirror. The Zohar personifies this idea. It says that all who are the masters of Kabbalah emanate from the sphere of Tiferes. All who are called prophets emanate from Netzach and Hod. All who have the level of Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit, emanate from Malchus. And these are the grades. Of course, that further brings the problem. When one is discussing Kabbalah and one pronounces themselves to be a Kabbalist, Essentially what they are saying is that they could make the prophet Eliyahu, Elijah, or Yeshayahu, Isaiah, etc., which clearly sounds like an absurdity. However, if one is truly a Kabbalist and they have the Elons, they know the system and the secrets of God, and they begin to share the true mysteries, one could immediately see how one could enter into prophetic vision through those secret teachings. An example of which is on the following page. And again, most of my works are written in Aramaic and Hebrew. And we can see here the secrets of Aleph separates Mem from Shin. And many on the channel should be familiar with this concept. One could immediately see how understanding Aleph separates Mem from Shin could lead into a prophetic state of visions. Another explanation is that the prophets did not actually understand what it was that they were seeing, meaning they did not know the interpretation of their prophecy, which was different than the Chachamim, who said words specifically engineered to the higher light, meaning they garbed their words intentionally. So I will go through a little bit of this sefer. And this is a sefer Elon, meaning it is an Elon in a book form, revealing many of the divine mysteries. You can see the aspects of the Simsum, the restriction, how it mirrors in the Mazalot, a glimpse of the 231 gates, the heart spark, which is at the center of the Simsum. We can see the 231 gates, which was discussed, the Olam HaMalbush. We can see deeper parts of Aleph separates Mem from Shin, and how it transcends the Melachim, or angels, and also the Shadim. We can see the origin of the 22 letters in the Magen David, or the Star of David, how they are the roots of the fronts and backs of the Sefirot, which is the world of the Malbush, as it was shown with the heart spark on the previous pages. We can see the emergence of the kings of Edom from the heart spark, as shown here. So we can see all of these things are following a precise system, because all of the mysteries of Kabbalah are in a precise system. And it requires a roadmap in order to properly teach. Again, just because one simply copies an Elon does not qualify them as a Kabbalist. One must take the journey, and ultimately the production of their own Elon at the very end is the sign of both their efficiency and competency in the subject. Once they had the Elon, which would be the culmination of all of their study, meaning the final thing they produce, then they could bestow the teachings to others by guiding them through the proper avenues and roadmaps. And until this day, at least when it comes to the online forum, I have not seen a single other true Kabbalist. I mentioned in the video that the garment of Esav now has the merit to teach Kabbalah because he has produced an Elon himself. That Elon contains the system by which merits him to discuss it in a proper manner. It's not that others can't discuss the mysteries of Kabbalah. It just means teaching the Kabbalah with any true efficacy requires an Elon, something that, unfortunately, as stated before, is not present in our generation. There are hidden masters who have the secrets of the Elon and have their own Elons, as I shown with Rabbi Kaduri. However, they keep it a closed practice and do not share it with the world, which unfortunately is a disservice to humanity. It is written, Israel is a light to the nations. And it requires immense study, years and years and years of study. I published and wrote many things. By published, I mean manuscripted, many various tomes before I ever began creating YouTube videos or came into the public eye regarding these matters. These are all the various names of Hashem into the Spheros in the world of Beriah. These are discussed at great detail in an esoteric sefer called Brit Minocha. They go through the various Nikudim and are used for various meditative practices to enter into the Hechalot, or the chambers. We can see the 72-letter name of God, the root of many countless angels, 360 angels to be precise. We can see the name of 72 primary angels, the creation of the restriction and the dust, which is precisely what this is discussing, as we can see the creation of the dust here on the following pages. We can see the primordial restriction and the great Adam Kadmon as being demonstrated and shown here. The secret of the restriction and the all-seeing eye, a Rikain pin as it's been shown with his 3 heads. The heights of the 72, 63, 45, 52. The spreading of Erech. The secrets of the Partsufim of Leah and Rachel. Secret of the plants, the various stages of Ibur, Yenucha, etc. The spreading of the Chasadim and Geburos, the shattering or the breaking of the vessels, the cup of blessing, how to understand this, the story of Genesis, as it was shown in a previous video, all the intricacies of the Tselem, the interactions between Ima, the development of the brains of Zer Anpin, so on and so forth. We can see in the books discussing true Kabbalah, the height of the restriction, the Simsumim, all the various partsufs. And in these books that deal with actual Kabbalah, which is a God science, a very advanced math, which takes many years of serious study to actually engage in, the Elan. And so we see exactly the 231 gates. We can see the square Simsum, which we saw earlier on a parchment. We can see the various states of the restriction. We'll see the Partufim of a Rikain pin in just a moment with Zaran pin, all discussing different tikkunim. We see here the Partufim of Zaran pin as it's been shown. We can see on the top right, Abba, Ima, being shown here. Israel Saba, Israel Tavuna, the Partufim of Leah, Rachel, Yaakov, etc. We can see the different worlds of Beriah, Yetzirah, Asiya. We can see down here the Mazalot. We can see the various Klipot. Give a gander of some of the insides of these sefers. I'll share with you just to flip through of 4 various sefers dealing with Kabbalah, so you can see how advanced the subject really is. And once you have understood the systems of the Elan, you can begin to study these esoteric sefers and understand exactly what it is that you're looking at. I can give a brief example of that matter with something that has been shown regarding the Simsum, the restriction, the height of the partsufs, etc. You can see here the restriction, Atik, Arik, Abba, Ima, Zarin, Pin, and Nukva. This showing the circular spheros and the linear spheros, or the circular worlds and linear worlds. We can see the various heights, etc. Both circular and straight aspects, the interactions between the partsufs, etc. And then you would be able to enter into the more esoteric and advanced material as being shown here. And this is what true Kabbalah actually looks like. 99.9% of what is called Kabbalah in the Western world really isn't Kabbalah. It's Kabbalah with a Q or Kabbalah with a C. Again, this is also the reason why in that video with Garment of Esav I stated there aren't any real Kabbalists here in the Western world. However, in Israel, there are Kabbalists, most certainly, that study this material. Having a mastery and an understanding of the Elon is necessary before engaging in this type of material. And the reason why I stressed that the Elon was the hallmarker of the legitimacy of a Kabbalist is because it's the culmination of a mastery of the system and the understanding of the Kabbalah. Unfortunately, as stated, there are no real Kabbalists here in the Western world, certainly not on the internet. What is found on the internet is Kabbalah with a C and Kabbalah with a Q. There are some people who study Kabbalah and talk about Kabbalah, and that's perfectly fine. Some people that study Zohar and talk about Zohar, and that's perfectly fine. But truly initiated, no. Not at all. And this is important because taking something too serious and studying material from people that aren't qualified is spiritually dangerous. When you study this material under someone who has not truly earned the right to teach the material or has learned the true ways of that material, then it can lead into spiritual psychosis, of which many people, unfortunately, in this day and age, suffer from. You can see that the material looks virtually alien in nature, because Kabbalah is really a God science. Thus, in all of the videos, you will see a tikkun. A tikkun simply means a key or a correction, and the lessons and teachings are expounded off of that key of correction. This is how to properly discourse. Kabbalah is not something that's just simply talked about. The pattern must be there, the tikkun must be there, and it must be expounded via the system itself. Here's a glimpse of another sefer that deals with true Kabbalah. Now, unfortunately, some of these books have fallen into the hands of grifters and others that would unfortunately seek to exploit them, possibly even make for themselves a name, etc. However, those people are far from actually penetrating the depth of what they're looking at. Without proper instruction and proper initiation into the mysteries via the proper pathways of the Kabbalah, which is the esoteric dimensions or inner levels of the Torah, all of this information remains completely inaccessible. Thus, when looking to study true Kabbalah, you should immediately seek, does this person have an Elon? Are they showing tikkunim? Are their teachings coming from the divine science, the God math? If you don't see these things, then they should be dismissed as an actual Kabbalist that is in the classical sense, meaning the esoteric dimensions of the Torah. However, if they are teaching Kabbalah with a Q or Kabbalah with a C, that is to say, Hermetic or Sufi, then this does not apply to them at all. So, I hope that this video was able to inform and educate you all and kind of give you a behind-the-scenes glimpse at some of the various esoteric sefers that I rarely ever show or share online, especially in my videos, and hopefully to give you guys a little bit of understanding about the history of the images that you guys are seeing in my videos, the scroll that you guys see in the beginning intro segment, as well as the following segment, which I will share with you the creation process as cataloged on my TikTok channel. As I created some of my Elons, I took daily videos to show the progress, and I will share those in just a moment. The last thing that I will say is this. If anyone is truly seeking to become a Kabbalist, first, study the Torah, learn to uphold the mitzvahs, enter in, read Talmud, the Midrash, read the Mishnah, read the Zohar, before studying any Lurianic writings. And when studying Lurianic writings, or when studying the Zohar, do not study those things by themselves. Study it only by one who has entered the ways of wisdom and left the ways of wisdom in peace. And seek the proof, the seal, the insignia of the king by that person. They should have the Elon. They should know the system. They should have the keys. So with that being said, here is a glimpse of the creation process of many of the Elons. All of these tomes were written before I wrote any of the Elon notes, and they cover the various mysteries of the Kabbalah, and this was during my time of instruction. And I wrote all of these tomes before I actually came public and began to teach any of the mysteries. It's important that one do their due diligence in their study before producing an Elon, before producing a scroll. So this is just a glimpse. Many of my books are in Aramaic and or Hebrew. However, a couple of them recently have been in English. This particular book was written from beginning to end in 42 days and 42 nights. And of course, is 600 pages long, so you can get a good glimpse of that in there. There we go. This particular book began on 4/30/21, and 42 days later, on 6/10/21, it was completed from beginning to end. This was also a very incredible sefer that was produced. This particular sefer was produced in 3 days, believe it or not. Just a glimpse of it. And it's entirely illuminated from beginning to end. You can see that it was finished on 5/13/2023 and began 5/10/2023. This is one of the books that Malachi witnessed its completion. Okay, everyone, that was a glimpse of some behind-the-scenes looks. Perhaps I can do a deeper dive on the Elons or some of the manuscripts if that's something you guys would like to see. So with that being said, many blessings to you all. Shabbat Shalom and Shalom Selah.